When they found Chioma's empty school uniform, it was still wet, glistening with something dark that made the fabric smoke. Inside, where her body should have been, hundreds of tiny worms writhed and twisted, each one with a face that looked almost human, screaming with her voice. But that was only the beginning. The children of Unity Primary School were about to learn why their ancestors had strict rules about sharing food. Rules written in blood. Rules their parents had forgotten. And now, some of them would never come home again. In the village of Iko, where electric lights had dimmed the power of old truths, Babacol moved through the halls of Unity Primary School. Though blind, he saw clearer than most, his unseeing eyes perceiving what others could not. "Something is wrong," he muttered, his gnarled fingers gripping his broom tighter as an unfamiliar scent wafted through the morning air. Sweet, unnaturally so, like ripe mangoes left too long in the sun. The smell made his stomach turn. The new girl arrived just after Harmattan's breath had faded from the land. The children of Unity Primary School were still sluggish from the dry season's end, dragging their feet across the red earth. But she walked like she owned the soil beneath her feet. The children called her Nene. She was beautiful in an unsettling way. Skin smooth as freshly pounded yam, a smile warm as evening lantern light. Her uniform, pristine white, untouched by the dust that clung to every other child. She never carried books, only a gleaming metal lunch tin wrapped in fine cloth. And oh, the smell. When she opened it at lunchtime, the aroma of jollof rice poured out like the laughter of a long-lost mother, sweet, deep, irresistible. It coiled around and drew the children in like flies to honey. They had never smelled rice like this before. The first to break was Chioma, the teacher's daughter. "I forgot my food at home," she said, voice hesitant. The smiling girl beamed, her perfect teeth shining. "Share with me," she said, her voice melodic yet discordant. "Is this not what good friends do?" Babacol listened as the children broke their parents' warnings about sharing food during harvest season. Chioma took a bite, then another, then another. By the end of the day, she was muttering to herself, strange, garbled sounds. Her mother scolded her for speaking nonsense, but the next morning, the other children noticed her tongue flickering in ways human tongues should not move. By the end of the week, more children had eaten, their voices and tongues twisting into something inhuman. In the far corner of the school, Babacol listened, and what he heard froze his bones. Those sounds spilling from the children's lips, curses, ancient, forbidden curses. He knew them. His grandmother had whispered those same words when she told him stories of the witch queen. The queen of the old forest, a mother from long ago whose children had been stolen by men with skin pale as bone, who came with guns and crosses. In her grief, she had turned to the darkness. She had made a bargain. Now she creates new ones from the flesh of the innocent, born from the seeds of corrupted kindness. Parents noticed first that their children couldn't sleep, complaining of movement in their stomachs. "Like snakes dancing," one child whimpered. But modern medicine found nothing wrong. Pills and syrups sat useless on bedside tables while something ancient grew within. That night, as Babacol swept the empty classrooms, he heard them in the distance, the first sign of the corruption his grandmother had warned about. Wet, writhing sounds. He knew then. She was here. The school principal dismissed his warnings. "Superstitious nonsense," she scoffed, even as more children began speaking with twisted tongues. The parents did not listen. "Ah, Babacoli, it is just childish nonsense," they laughed. But then the children began to complain. Something was moving inside them. It started as an itch in their bellies, then a slithering beneath their skin. By the time the first worm pushed itself free from Chioma's mouth, slick with bile and grinning with tiny hooked teeth, it was too late. Mama Adana, who sold pepper soup at the gate, then saw the truth when her son vomited writhing darkness onto her stall. By the third day, the first child disappeared. They found only empty clothes and a wet trail leading nowhere. The next morning, 3 more were gone. Parents began keeping their children home, but it was too late. The witch queen's essence had already taken root. Nene still came to school each day, her smile growing wider as her classmates dwindled. The sweet smell around her had turned putrid, like rotting fruit and fresh graves. Only Baba Cole understood what it meant. The witch queen was ready to birth her demon children. During morning assembly, Chioma collapsed. Her skin rippled as something moved beneath it, pressing outward like fingers under cloth. The other infected children followed, their bodies contorting as the witch queen finally revealed her true form. Gone was the perfect schoolgirl. In her place stood something ancient and terrible. Her true form, a mass of writhing darkness with too many eyes, each one filled with centuries of hatred. "You forgot the old ways," her voice thundered, no longer sweet, but grinding like granite on bone. "You let your children take food from strangers, abandoned the protections your ancestors died to learn. Now they will be my children." In the school hall, children screamed as their classmates' bodies split open like rotten fruit, dark shapes writhing free. These weren't the children who had gone missing. These were something else, something that had never been human. Baba Cole stood before the witch queen, his unseeing eyes seeing everything. "I remember what my grandmother taught me," he said, his voice carrying the weight of generations. "I remember the price paid to bind you before." The witch queen laughed, a sound like bones breaking. "Your grandmother, yes, the old fool who helped trap me for a century. But look how quickly they forgot her warnings. One generation of convenience, of dismissing the old ways as backward, and here I am again." The writhing masses that had been children began taking shape, twisted reflections of what they'd been, with too many limbs and eyes that held their parents' screaming reflections. But Baba Cole wasn't finished. He began to sing, not a song of power or battle, but a simple lullaby his grandmother had taught him. The same one she'd used to warn children about the dangers of taking food from strangers. This lullaby, like all lullabies of old, were binding spells, wards against evil. The witch queen's laughter faltered. Some of the transformed children paused, recognition flickering in their inhuman eyes. They remembered this song. Their mothers had sung it to them before modern conveniences replaced bedtime stories. "You may take their flesh," Baba Cole's voice grew stronger, "but you cannot take what is burned into their souls. Our traditions, our warnings, our stories." The remaining parents and teachers, watching in horror, began to join in. One voice, then another, then many, the lullaby growing stronger with each added voice. The witch queen screamed in rage, but the sound was drowned out by the community finding its voice again. Some of the twisted children began to cry, not with inhuman voices, but with the sobs of lost children hearing their mother's lullabies. The witch queen's form twisted in fury, her darkness spreading like spilled ink across the school hall. "You cannot save them all," she hissed. "Some are already mine. Some were given freely when their parents chose convenience over tradition, when they mocked the old ways as primitive." She was right. Some of the transformed children were too far gone, their humanity completely consumed. Their new forms skittered into the shadows, leaving trails of something dark and wet. The parents who had been most dismissive of tradition watched in horror as their children disappeared forever. But others could still be saved. Baba Cole pulled out the red thread his grandmother had given him decades ago, the one she said would be needed when the queen returns to claim what was never hers. "The price must be paid," he announced. "A community that forgets must remember through loss. But those who kept even a small flame of tradition alive, those children we can save." The witch queen's rage shook the building as parents formed a circle, the song growing stronger. Each verse was a remembrance, each chorus a renewal of ancient promises. Those who had maintained some connection to tradition, even if just a fragment, found their children could still be pulled back from the brink. Mama Adana, who had always insisted on proper food-sharing rituals, found her son first, his body slowly returning to human form as she sang. Others followed, but not all. The price of forgetting was steep. The witch queen's form began to dissolve as the song reached its crescendo, but her voice remained. I will return when you forget again. I will always return when convenience outweighs wisdom. When your children no longer know why they shouldn't share food with strangers. When your modern ways make you believe you're too sophisticated for tradition. As her essence faded, forced back into binding by the community's remembrance, the true horror of what had happened became clear. Empty chairs in classrooms, missing faces in family photos, the cost of forgetting paid in innocent lives. The school stood changed forever. In the classrooms where children once carelessly shared snacks, empty seats served as permanent reminders. Each vacant chair held a story of what happens when tradition is dismissed as superstition, when ancient wisdom is traded for modern convenience. Baba Cole moved through the halls, his broom sweeping away the last physical traces of what had happened. But some stains couldn't be cleaned. The dark marks on walls where transformed children had skittered away, the scratches on floors where others had been saved. Our ancestors paid in blood to learn these lessons, he told the gathering of parents and surviving children. Every tradition, every superstition, every warning passed down. They were written in suffering so that future generations wouldn't have to learn them again. Parents who had lost their children wept, understanding too late why their own parents had been so strict about food sharing, why certain rules couldn't be broken even if they seemed meaningless in modern times. Those whose children were saved held them closer, understanding now that convenience was a poor trade for safety, that dismissing the old ways didn't make the dangers they protected against any less real. In the months that followed, changes came to echo. Parents began teaching traditions again. Children learned the old songs, not just as quaint entertainment, but as vital warnings. The school instituted strict food-sharing policies, not based on modern hygiene but on ancient wisdom. At night, mothers once again sang the warning lullabies, the same ones their grandmothers had sung, the ones they had almost forgotten. They sang of the witch queen who steals children through kindness, of the dangers that hide behind sweet smiles and shared meals. But some parents could only sing to empty rooms, their children's beds forever vacant. These rooms became shrines to forgetting, monuments to the cost of believing that modern times had somehow made ancient dangers obsolete. Baba Cole still walks the school halls, his unseeing eyes watching for signs. He knows the witch queen will return when the pain fades, when new generations begin to forget again. But for now, the community remembers. They maintain their vigilance, protect their innocence, and understand that some traditions carry prices too steep to ignore. In Echo today, children still share food, but properly, with blessing and ritual. They know why certain rules must be followed, why some kindnesses must be refused, why convenience must never override wisdom. They know because some of their friends are no longer there to learn these lessons with them. And in the dark hours, when the wind carries strange sweet smells, they remember that the witch queen is waiting for them to forget again, waiting for the day when modern life makes them believe they're too sophisticated for superstition, waiting for the next generation to pay the price of forgetting. For in Echo, they learned the hardest way that progress without wisdom is merely another path to destruction, and that some traditions are written in blood for a reason. So tell me, what rules did your parents and grandparents have that never made sense to you? What traditions seemed silly, backwards, or embarrassing at the time? Maybe they had strict rules about when you could eat or who you could accept gifts from. Drop a comment below, like and share the superstitions you grew up with. Because sometimes, those odd little rules passed down through generations were written for a reason. And who knows, maybe the wisdom of your ancestors has been protecting you all along, or at the very least today. With this, and more lessons from folktales from African mythology.